Well, Jake Paul's attorney says he was out of state and not at his Calabasas home during that raid today. The FBI says they're investigating allegations of criminal acts. Today, YouTube star Jake Paul is making headlines after an FBI raid at his home in Calabasas. Sky 5 was over the scene Wednesday morning as federal agents entered Paul's home in a gated community off Mulholland Highway. 24 feds, some in tactical gear, could be seen carrying evidence from the property, including several firearms. After the search, a SWAT team was seen leaving in a procession of law enforcement.
This all ends with a career collapsing under federal lights and a jaw shattered so badly it may have permanently rewritten the future of influencer boxing forever. And now we snap sharply backward, because you need to understand how the story went from quiet whispers to full-blown sirens to something that still feels unfinished and far from resolved. The moment Anthony Joshua detonated Jake Paul's confidence inside that ring on December 19th, 2025, something else stirred in the shadows and began moving fast, almost too fast to comprehend. And no, this doesn't feel real. Not like this. Not all at once. Because a reckoning usually doesn't arrive this violently or announce itself this loudly. Yet here it is, shaking everything at the same time.
Just a little bit because you noticed he was tiring out?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely a bit. You know, I wanted to give the fans a show, but I didn't want to hurt someone that didn't need to be hurt.
Did you carry Mike?
Yeah, I mean, a little bit. Yeah, like there was a point where, you know, I was just like, okay, he's not really engaging back. And so I don't know if he's tired or whatever. And I could just tell, you know, his age was showing a little bit. And I just have so much respect for him. And that like violence war thing between us, like after he slapped me, I wanted to, you know, be aggressive and take him down and knock him out and all that stuff. But
it unfolded almost exactly how skeptics predicted. Only worse, darker, and far messier. Because this loss wasn't just a loss. It was a trigger. A signal flare that told everyone watching the House of Cards had finally shaken hard enough for people to start pulling at loose threads. And once those threads began snapping, federal agencies didn't ease their way in. They kicked the door down, turning online jokes into sworn statements and memes into potential evidence almost overnight. Suddenly, the era of Jake Paul stopped feeling loud and untouchable and started feeling fragile and exposed. Rewind to when all of this was still brushed off as a joke, when calling the fight scripted made you sound paranoid, when fans noticed strange timing, soft exchanges, and odd moments, but dismissed it all as entertainment. But curiosity doesn't disappear. It mutates, and over time that curiosity became a pressure cooker, filled with clips, slowed down footage, awkward pauses, and cooperative opponents that felt less like real combat and more like choreography. And even then, people didn't walk away because something felt off, and leaving felt like missing the exact moment everything finally cracked.
Paul versus Mike Tyson was 100% scripted. Mike Tyson repeatedly bit his boxing glove throughout the fight. When fights are scripted, fighters do weird gestures to signal that they're hurt. It's very possible Mike Tyson was biting on his glove to tell Jake Paul to calm down. Now, if that's not enough proof that this fight was scripted, in the middle of the fight, Mike Tyson is literally talking.
Then the Tyson fight blew the door completely off. Not with one single moment, but with too many strange details piling up. Like repeated glove biting that looked less like habit and more like a nervous tell, whispered words in the clinch that didn't sound like trash talk, and referee cues that felt coded rather than routine. Suddenly, the theory stopped feeling abstract and started feeling organized, because it wasn't just vibes anymore. It was timed, mapped, and written down round by round as if someone knew exactly what was coming before it happened. And when that alleged script leaked, the atmosphere shifted instantly, because disbelief gave way to fear about what else might be hiding beneath the surface. This is where it gets dangerous, because that script wasn't perfect, and that's the part nobody wants to talk about, since imperfection suggests improvisation under pressure, suggests someone went off book, suggests control starting to slip. And when you ask yourself who benefits when control slips at that level with that much money involved, yeah, you're asking the right question, because someone is lying here, and the truth is, We haven't even reached the worst part yet.
Because of the weight differences, the weight difference in there, I only know one man that'll do the weight difference like that, and that's the Bronze Bomber. For me, in my opinion, I think it's scripted a little bit because, of the weight difference, and Joshua is a former, champion, and also, he's current, he's active. This is going to be the first time that we see Paul, fighting an active fighter. We seen the Mike Tyson, that was all fun, that was cute, it's fun and games and stuff, but now you're dealing with a real professional,
Anthony Joshua entering this story is where everything truly tilted, because he was never supposed to be here. Not like this, not active, not elite, and not decorated with Olympic gold and real heavyweight credibility. Once sports books lit up and international money poured in, this stopped being content and crossed into a space where outcomes matter legally. Because when a fight is predetermined and money is wagered, that isn't entertainment, it's fraud. And that's when the FBI starts paying close attention. Joshua didn't fight like someone protecting a narrative. He fought like a professional assessing a mismatch, patient without being generous, calm without being cautious. And when he landed, when Paul went down, and when that jaw broke in two places, the ring delivered a truth that couldn't be hidden, because blood doesn't lie and bone can't be faked. In that moment, the illusion shattered so violently it echoed backward through every previous fight people once defended.
Hey, you need to get the fight into this round. You need to carry him for X amount of rounds. You need to do your part to get it into the 5th, 6th, or whatever.
Absolutely no way ever. I mean, if you look at a couple of the right hands that AJ missed with in the first couple of rounds, like they would have done the same job on Jake's jaw if they would have landed. And Jake did very well to avoid them. So I always said going into the fight, AJ's not the kind of guy that's going to come out like a train, just start swinging away. He's going to take his time, and that's what he did. The fight definitely went a few more rounds than anticipated from Anthony, but it's like even now, it's like, it was definitely a fix. Some guy commented today on one of my posts, yeah, it was definitely a fix. I go,
listen closely here, because this is one of those moments you might want to rewind later, as promoters didn't deny the accusations the way anyone would normally expect. They didn't laugh them off. They didn't call them impossible, and they didn't dismiss them outright. Instead, they pointed to investigations as proof, which is unsettling, because only someone who understands just how close the line really is talks like that. That alone should make your stomach tighten, because it sounds like someone who's afraid of what digging too deeply might actually uncover. After the knockout, after the surgery, and after the forced honesty of admitting he was beaten, the pivot came fast and almost felt panicked, with sudden rebranding, lawsuits, legal threats, and an awkward mix of silence paired with loud denials. That's when paranoia began spreading online, as people noticed how every response felt defensive rather than confident, how the narrative seemed carefully managed instead of clearly explained. And yes, this is the point where you should start wondering who told who to stop talking, and why that decision was made so quickly.
California mansion has been raided by the FBI. Multiple news organizations report. You can see in this aerial footage agents in uniform outside his home in Calabasas. Ernie told Reuters he would cooperate with the federal investigation.
Looked like after his boxing career.
People think I do steroids and all this shit, so I have a plan because I think it's fucking bizarre. That's like the only excuse they can come up with is like rigged fights. Jake Paul does steroids. So after boxing, I'm gonna do a cycle of steroids to show people what Jake Paul on steroids.
Now add performance-enhancing suspicion to that fire, and it starts burning out of control, because people noticed sudden mass gains without any loss of speed, heavyweight size paired with cruiserweight movement, refusal of stricter testing, and constant deflection instead of real transparency. And when his own past words about maybe doing steroids later just to prove a point resurface, it doesn't calm anything down. It makes it worse. Because fighters who are clean don't joke like that. They don't tease it. And they don't leave that door open. Someone clipped those comments and saved them for a reason that hasn't fully surfaced yet. Online communities didn't create this collapse. They documented it piece by piece, obsessively building timelines that suddenly lined up far too well after the Joshua fight. And when hardcore analysts and casual fans start reaching the same conclusions at the same time, that's when you know perception has shifted for good. Because once the audience stops suspending disbelief, the show is over, And Jake Paul, without belief, is just another guy who can get hit.
To do with the fight being anything but a real fight that has exactly the same situation as any professional fight. And that's exactly the same thing here for the Anthony Joshua fight. It's just beyond mind-blowing that people would think that. Anthony Joshua was on record saying that if he didn't finish him in the first round, that would be disappointing, that it would be a failure. The narrative changed as we got closer to fight night and obviously post-fight, and I understand why, but they were pretty adamant it would take.
So no, this doesn't end with a knockout, a raid, or a shattered jaw, because it only ends when whatever is still hidden is finally dragged fully into the daylight. And judging by how fast everything escalated and how suddenly nervous everyone sounds, the next update doesn't feel like it will be smaller. It feels like it will be worse. If you think you've already heard the craziest part, you're lying to yourself, because this story is still breathing, still shifting, and feels like it's winding up to explode all over again. That Mike Tyson script still hangs over everything, because leaks at that level don't happen by accident. Someone chose to release it. Someone wanted the conversation to change, and it feels less like coincidence and more like either a warning shot or retaliation. If that's true, then we're only seeing the surface of a much deeper internal fracture that hasn't fully revealed itself yet. Jake saying he'll come back and keep winning sounded brave on the surface, but it also sounded hollow, because once Mystique dies, it's almost impossible to resurrect, and boxing fans are ruthless with exposed fighters, especially ones who talk big without the aura of inevitability. Every future opponent smells blood instead of money.
AJ. You know, the fact that he did that, it was good because you know we didn't think it was going to go 6 rounds. We thought it was going to go 2. So the fact that he made 6 rounds is an accomplishment for Jake Paul.
Was there anything that stuck out with you from the fight?
Yeah, really, who was in better shape? I thought that Joshua was in great shape compared to, you know, Jake Paul, because he was running around the ring.
You guys gotta walk,
and that takes out a lot of energy, especially when you're not used to it.
That alone reshapes negotiations fast. I keep thinking about Mike Tyson and all of this, a legend reduced to a symbol inside someone else's narrative, and whether scripted or not, that alone feels sad, because legends deserve clarity, not ambiguity, and the fact that we're even debating his intent shows how messy this era became, blurring respect, spectacle, and sport into something deeply uncomfortable. Do I think Jake Paul orchestrated everything maliciously? No. But do I think corners were cut, narratives managed, and risks calculated far too aggressively? Absolutely, because combat sports eventually punish that kind of arrogance, since fists don't respect marketing decks, and Anthony Joshua proved that in the most definitive way possible. What happens next matters more than what already happened, because silence, cooperation, transparency, or deflection will shape how this is remembered. And right now everyone sounds like they're choosing their words very carefully, which tells me this isn't over. Not legally, not culturally, and not historically. If federal charges come, the influencer boxing movement collapses overnight. And even if they don't, the damage is already done, because legitimacy, once questioned, never fully recovers, and future fighters will either demand protection or avoid the brand entirely, which is its own slow death. Stripped of hype, this is my honest take. Jake Paul changed boxing's audience forever, but boxing changed him back the moment Anthony Joshua stopped playing along. Whatever comes next, raids, lawsuits, silence, or redemption attempts will define not just his legacy, but an entire era that tried to bend reality and finally got bent in return. When Joshua flattened him, it felt like watching reality punch through a screen, because AJ didn't just beat him. He exposed the gap between a manufactured boxing universe and the real thing, and it didn't matter how many pay-per-views sold or how loud the walkout music was. When a 2-time heavyweight champion decides he's done playing along, the truth comes out fast and brutal, and Jake didn't look hurt. He looked shocked that the script wasn't saving him anymore. People ask if this was inevitable, and yes, I think it was, because you can only cure opponents for so long before the sport demands payment, and boxing always collects its debt. That's why the Tyson fight fell off to so many people, not because Mike is weak, but because legends don't move like that unless something is wrong or agreed upon, and that discomfort never left. I've watched combat sports for decades. Real fights, ugly fights, mismatches, robberies, and wars. And the Jake Paul era always felt like a parallel universe. Entertaining but insulated, protected by contracts, clauses, and friendly matchmaking. Put that next to Anthony Joshua's resume. Olympic gold, Klitschko, Ruiz, Usyk, and it feels disrespectful in hindsight that we even debated the outcome, because one man lived the sport and the other monetized it. What really bothers me isn't Jake losing. Fighters lose. It's the aftermath, the scrambling, the legal threats, the sudden silence, followed by carefully worded statements, because that's not how innocent confidence behaves. That's what damage control looks like. When lawsuits lead instead of transparency, it signals narrative control, not clarity, and those are very different intentions. Logan Paul being tied to this add another layer, because like it or not, they're a brand unit, and when one side wobbles, the other feels it instantly, which is why reports of visible distress matter more than people think, because confident empires don't panic during investigations, they wait. Panic suggests uncertainty about what investigators might already know. The FBI raid is where seriousness replaces speculation, because federal agencies don't kick in doors over vibes or tweets. They move when paperwork stacks up and financial trails start connecting dots. And while that doesn't mean guilt, it absolutely means gravity. The timing after the Joshua fight feels less like coincidence and more like acceleration. Once public perception flipped and pressure intensified, defenses that rely on logic instead of denial reveal an understanding of exactly where the legal line sits. And they also reveal that Joshua didn't need Jake Paul. Jake Paul needed Anthony Joshua. Comments from people who understand both hype and humiliation resonate, because curated careers eventually collide with real danger. And when spectacle skips the slow path, the reckoning comes harder. The performance-enhancing conversation is uncomfortable but unavoidable, because rapid physical changes combined with selective testing create patterns, and patterns are what investigations follow. I don't think Jake Paul is evil. I think he's ambitious, hyper-competitive, and obsessed with winning narratives. And that combination is dangerous in combat sports, because fighting doesn't care about branding, analytics, or optics. It cares about skill, timing, conditioning, and heart. And when those don't match the story being sold, reality snaps back, sometimes violently. Anthony Joshua walking away relatively untouched says more than any conspiracy ever could, because dominance doesn't need explanation, and broken jaws don't come from acting. They come from physics. That's why the Miami fight will be replayed forever, not as entertainment, but as evidence of what happens when protected worlds collide with the real thing.